Hey everyone, my name's Nick, and this is titled A Loneliness Epidemic in America. And since 2020, that's exactly what we've had. According to Dr. Vivek Murphy, who was the Surgeon General, about 1 in 2 Americans have reported increased feelings of loneliness, increased feelings of isolation in their lives since the 2020 outbreak. A couple reasons for this besides COVID. COVID was a big one. We had the lockdown, and that a lot of people just didn't bounce back. The levels of connection, feelings of connection in our lives, it just didn't really return back to where it was prior to the outbreak. So something hasn't really gone back to normal. We're getting more cut off from each other. And another reason why that may be is the social media. Social media is a type of surrogate to connection. We have this entertainment right here in the palms of our hands all the time, and I'm guilty of it myself. I know that there's plenty of times that I could be having a conversation with my wife, and we'll both just be on the phone scrolling. If we didn't have that, then maybe there would be conversations or things of connection that would have happened if it wasn't for this distraction that we have. There have been correlations from there was the National Library of Medicine. Higher levels of social media use usually correlate with higher levels of mental illness. So going back to the original point though, there is a big correlation too between isolation, loneliness, and mental illness. Typically, if we can get the feelings of isolation and loneliness to go down, and feelings of connection to go up, the mental illness symptoms will start to decrease. But we can approach this from a few different angles to try to remedy this. I'm kind of going to start at the biggest, the macro, and work our way down to our individual lives. But macro, we don't really have anything right now. There's things in place already for the micro and meso to increase connection, lower that feeling of loneliness and isolation. But for the macro level, on a national level, we don't really have anything, not that I know of. And I think what we could utilize is emotional intelligence classes in schools. I'm a huge advocate for this, and I feel like one of my purposes is to really try to push this, to really try to get this going and get some momentum behind this, because it seems to me that there is a lack of that in our lives, in our country. We put a lot of emphasis on STEM, math, history, science, all that stuff, and that's important. Those are important, but there's no value in emotional intelligence. And I think because in a capitalistic society, it's more based on production rather than connection, right? We probably are expected to get our emotional intelligence from our families, but a lot of our families don't have much of that either. And, essentially, if we could see an increase in this, we're going to see an increase in connection. So if we can get essentially principles like that are discussed and utilized in CBT, DBT, ACT therapies in schools, then we're probably going to see people have a much better relationship with themselves as well as others, right? So that's that in a nutshell. Understanding what we feel and understanding the connection between what we feel and what it is that we're needing at the time is one of the most basic, fundamental parts of having emotional intelligence. And we have a lot of tragic strategies to try to deal with what we feel and meet our needs. We meet our needs in tragic ways sometimes. And I think we would see less of that if we could get the emotional intelligence classes in schools. The biggest issues I've ever had in my life, maybe is similar for you, but the biggest issues I've ever had in my life were not solved by math or science or English or any of that stuff they teach in schools. What would have helped me the most is being able to recognize what it is I'm feeling and allow that to help me be able to discern what it is I'm needing right now and how I can meet that need. All the other ways I can meet that need, right? There's a lot more that goes into all that. I only have 10 minutes, but let's go to mezzo. So mezzo, we could see this is more the middle ground where we can have a large number of people affected, but we could see this with social work, service work. Service work, which is social work, is probably a type of service work. But service work, going to volunteer at places, this is a way we could not just increase that level of mezzo, but also the micro, because it's going to increase feelings of connection for you too, right? We can create more social programs for adults. I know in high school, I love sports. A lot of people I know miss sports, and I know we have rec leagues. That's not available everywhere. It's usually only more so available in more populated areas. We need them in rural areas. Being in a rural area, you're probably more prone to isolation and loneliness because there's just not as many people. So it doesn't have to just be rec sports leagues. Any type of social program that we could get people to come together over common hobbies or common things that they enjoy, whatever it is, right? I think there is some programs that are available, but we could see an increase in that. All right, on a micro level, we need to discover the barriers that we have within ourselves to connection. So for some, we may have insecurities, we may have trust issues, we may have resentments, we have a million things, right? But it normally always boils down to fear, shame, or pride. Those three things. So if you feel like one of those might be something that you struggle with, that might be one of your barriers to connection, right? And then we can approach that, right? We can work on the ways that we can become less fearful, less prideful, or less ashamed, and then our ability to connect will start to heal as well. It's kind of a skill too, and that's another thing that the macro, the emotional intelligence classes in schools could build, is help people learn how to connect, right? And I don't think many people were taught that. We're expected to, but especially now with our kids growing up with social media and all these distractions and all this extra stress, I think it can sometimes fall through the cracks, those social skills, right? And now I'm going to leave a link here in the video for it's 36 questions. This was a article published by Psychology Today. I think it was in the New York Times as well. But it's 36 questions to help increase connection. It may say to fall in love or something like that. Don't worry, but it's more about that feeling of connection, right? And they did it with, there's a little experiment they did. They did it with people that were strangers, people that were just acquaintances, people that had been dating for a little while, people that had been married for years, and they all reported a deeper sense of connection, a deeper feeling of a bond that had happened after answering these 36 questions. I've done it a few times with people, and I do think that you'll absolutely feel more connected. You'll get to know that person better, and they'll get to know you better. A big part of lowering that feeling of isolation, of loneliness, is just being seen, right? We're kind of special as human beings. We can be in a crowded room full of people and still feel alone. So we have to be able to be open, open, honest, and vulnerable to be able to really connect. And that goes back once again to maybe dismantling some of those barriers that we have to being able to do those things. Okay. About out of time. So thanks for watching and hope this helps. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm going to leave a link to a petition that I have created to help bring more attention to this getting emotional intelligence classes in schools. Hopefully with enough signatures, we can bring it to the right people and maybe get the ball rolling on this. So if you feel like this is something, like it's a good idea, if you'd just like to know more about it, you can also email me or whatever. And yeah, please sign. Thank you.